The sixth and final episode of the Obi-Wan Kenobi series is out, and it delivered on a lot that I was hoping to see back when the show was announced. More Owen and Beru, Kenobi trying to reach Vader one last time, Qui-Gon Jinn, and so much more, so let's dive in. The episode is kind of broken into two halves, and I want to talk about the Vader stuff first, and then we'll get to everything on Tatooine. The Empire is still hot on the heels of the surviving members of the Path after their narrow escape on Jabim. Obi-Wan offers to lure them away because he knows Vader will prioritize him over the others. This is a complete turnaround of his attitude in Part 1, refusing to help a fellow Jedi or even Leia until Bail makes him. I talked about this a couple weeks ago for Part 4, but Kenobi's arc reminds me so much of a line from Light of the Jedi about how a Jedi is at their strongest when they are helping others. Watching Obi-Wan go from hiding in a cave to a full-fledged Jedi Master again was probably my favorite aspect of this series. And I love his line about how Leia and the other children of the Path are the future. Their survival is more important than his. This entire story has absolutely felt like a bridge between the prequels and the originals, exactly as it should. It is bridging not just generations of characters in the films, but also generations of Star Wars fans. This might be a second chance for people who previously didn't like the prequel films to experience them with a fresh perspective and to see how it's all connected. In addition to Obi-Wan learning to help others again, we also see him overcoming his trust issues through Haja. I totally get why he was so untrusting of everyone at the start. His best friend became the second most evil person in the galaxy. But I loved seeing him go from complete disdain for Haja to complete trust when it comes to Leia, which in turn seems to inspire Haja. I kinda wish we had somehow been able to see one final scene with the character to see if Kenobi's faith changed him for the better, but I'm fine to assume that it did. Same goes for Roken. Kenobi's bravery changed his attitude from someone who did not want the Jedi around because it meant danger for his people, to someone who basically begs Obi-Wan not to go even though his leaving would get them all out of danger. As they part ways, Kenobi tells him to continue being a leader, and again, even though we don't see more from Roken, I assume that he does and maybe becomes a prominent member of the rebellion someday. Obi-Wan leads Vader away from the Path, and what has been described as the rematch of the century begins. I don't know if I'd go that far personally. I think I was hoping for a little more of that prequel duel energy, but it did have some very cool moments, and thematically, it's a home run. I like that Vader recognizes Kenobi's strength has returned, and again, it's not coming from anything other than his reconnection with and service to people who need help. Even though I could make plenty of connections between this series and a Rocky movie, we don't need a training montage of Obi-Wan doing Force push-ups or something to get his groove back. That's not what the Force is. I love that we find Kenobi buried at one point, just like his lightsabers and his true self were buried in the desert at the start of this series. And it's not anger or hatred or rage that frees him. He hears echoes of the past and his failures, but then he sees Leia and Luke and the hope for the future and the connections and relationships he has built. That's what sets him free, and that's what makes him strong. And boy does he come out swinging, feeling like the Obi-Wan Kenobi of the prequels more than ever before, and that scene with the rocks was sick. Vader gets his butt whooped here, and I love it, because like Yoda says, the dark side isn't stronger, it's just easier. It's easy to get buried under the weight of fear, leading to anger and so on. What's hard is letting go of your fear and anger and hatred, but when you do, you grow, and you grow stronger. Or to quote Obi-Wan himself to Maul in the Clone Wars, it takes strength to resist the dark side. Only the weak embrace it, and those who oppose it are more powerful than you'll ever be. The Sith think their anger and their hatred make them strong, but all it really does is isolate them in their misery. Of course, I loved the scene of Vader's sliced open helmet. The mixing of James Earl Jones with Hayden Christensen's voice was awesome. It's very similar, almost identical, to a scene that happens between Vader and Ahsoka in Star Wars Rebels. I'm okay with that since not everyone has seen Rebels, and still, nobody has seen this in live action yet. It's also cool that Obi-Wan and Ahsoka, the two surviving characters that were closest to Anakin, got to truly see him after his fall. But Ewan crushed this moment. I have been hoping to see Obi-Wan reach out to Anakin at some point in the series to recall that scene in Return of the Jedi where Vader tells Luke that Obi-Wan once thought there was still good in him. I think this counts. Having Kenobi apologize for his failures and then inadvertently receive some closure was great. Like, I think Vader thought him telling Obi-Wan that he was the one to kill Anakin Skywalker was badass, but really, it was exactly what his former master needed to hear. And it wasn't badass, it broke his heart and really did make him think Anakin was gone for good. And then he leaves him alone again. As Obi-Wan leaves the planet, he senses Luke in danger, and so now we'll talk about Reva and Tatooine. She has, of course, gone there after hearing Bail's message. I'm a lot more mixed on this half of the story. I have to assume Reva knows Luke is Anakin's son. Otherwise, why go there seeking her twisted idea of justice? That doesn't necessarily mean she knows his true importance. I don't think she knows about Leia, but I'm not crazy about someone new knowing this much. But I do really like seeing Owen and Beru fighting to protect their son. The books and comics have done a good job of showing that Owen Lars especially is a far more loving father figure than A New Hope paints him to be. Seeing that on screen was great. His insistence that Luke is, quote, his own was a big hell yeah moment for me. And stepping outside of my in-universe concerns, I like and I buy Reva's redemption. I loved in Part 5 seeing how futile her quest for vengeance was, how she planned and fought for 10 years only to wind up in exactly the same place. So she's like, fine, if I can't kill you, I'll kill your kid. And that leads her to realize that yes, she truly has become that which she swore to destroy, but she was able to break free of that, which is something we just saw Vader refuse to do. So it's nice for Obi-Wan to see that it is possible, and in the end, we see two characters that were horribly affected by Anakin's fall finally move beyond that past and look to the future. Meanwhile, we cut back to Mustafar and see Vader continuing to refuse to do exactly that. He seems hellbent on tracking Kenobi down again, but good old Sheev Palpatine suggests that his connection with his old master is weakening him, because Sidious wants Vader to be disconnected. He wants his apprentice to feel alone. It's a good callback to the line from The Rise of Skywalker, the dark side wins by making you feel like you're alone. That goes for those serving the dark side as well. Back on Alderaan, we see that Leia has begun to put more into her role as princess, just as Breha suggested in Part 1. The line that really got me here is when Bail says they can never repay Obi-Wan for rescuing her, and he replies that she has already done that. To me, it echoes Luke finally saving Vader in Return of the Jedi, and I love the idea that Leia was able to help remind Ben who he truly was. Thanks to her, we can see him wearing his full-on Jedi robes once again, and moving on from a life solely centered around the protection of Luke Skywalker, which was never fully real in the first place. Obviously, he's still around to watch over the Lars family should they need it, but he's no longer hiding behind that as an excuse, and I think it's nice that letting go of Luke and that sense of false duty leads to him getting an actual connection with him. And yes, I laughed at hello there. I'm glad they saved it for this. And right under the wire, they did the big thing. We finally got Qui-Gon Jinn as a Force ghost. I felt like it was a given since Obi-Wan was calling out to his old master way back in Part 1, but I love the way this was handled. That Qui-Gon was always there, but Obi-Wan was not balanced in the Force. He wasn't connected to who he truly was and his true purpose. But now he is. He has confronted his past and his failures and his fears, and now he's ready to move towards a better future. The story and the characters and the themes, that side of this episode and the entire season worked well for me. I do still have criticisms, mostly on the execution. I'm going to chalk it all up to budgetary issues for now, but I'm going to save that discussion for Friday and my full review of the series, because right now, I'm just enjoying the story we got. Let me know what you thought of Part 6 in the comments. If you haven't already, please like this video, subscribe to the channel for further Obi-Wan Kenobi coverage, follow us on TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram, and consider checking out our Patreon page. As always, thanks for watching, and may the Force be with you.